For centuries, the galaxy moved in perfect silence. 5 ancient alien races ruled the stars through the Galactic Federation, and every planet, every trade route, every war, every law passed through their hands. They were powerful, old, and untouchable. Then humans arrived from Earth. We were the new species. The outsiders. We didn't have the strongest fleets. We didn't have glowing plasma weapons or cities floating in the sky. Compared to them, we looked primitive. Our ships were loud. Our weapons were crude. Our methods were messy. They laughed at us. They called us reckless, violent, uncivilized. But they misunderstood something very important. We were adaptable. While they spent thousands of years perfecting comfort, humans spent thousands of years surviving chaos. We learned in storms. We evolved in hunger. We built civilizations with fire, steel, and stubbornness. And when the galaxy faced something it had never seen before, they came to us. The Void Eaters arrived from beyond the edge of known space. They were not an empire. They were not negotiators. They were not conquerors. They were a swarm. Endless. Mindless. Hungry. Giant hive ships blackened entire star systems, consuming planets, moons, and stations like insects stripping a forest bare. Federation shields failed. Their AI battle systems collapsed. Their elegant logic-based tactics were useless against something that only knew hunger. For the first time in centuries, the Federation was afraid. And so they came to humanity. They stood before Earth with promises in their mouths and desperation in their eyes. Help us, they said. Fight for us. Stand on the front lines and save the galaxy. In return, humanity would be rewarded. A permanent seat on the High Council. Access to Federation energy technology. Equality among the stars. We believed them. For 5 years, human soldiers fought in the cold dark of space. Millions never came home. Entire fleets vanished in the jaws of hive ships. While alien commanders calculated probabilities from safe command towers, humans were the ones boarding enemy vessels, fighting in vacuum, dying with blood on their hands and steel in their fists. Our weapons were primitive compared to theirs. But primitive worked. Railguns tore through Void Eater armor where plasma failed. Heavy kinetic rounds shattered hive ships that advanced lasers couldn't penetrate. Human soldiers fought dirty, fought fast, and fought like extinction was personal, because for us, it always was. We saved their worlds. We saved their children. We saved the Federation. And when the final Void Eater hive ship burned in silence beyond the outer rim, we thought the war was over. We thought we were finally equals. I was standing on the bridge of the UEF Retribution when we learned how wrong we were. Admiral Marcus Thorne stood at the front of the bridge, staring at the stars through the massive view screen. He was a man built by war, more scars than medals, more silence than speeches. We were expecting celebration, honors, recognition, maybe even peace. Instead, the stars filled with Federation warships. Hundreds of them. Our allies. They surrounded us without a word. The holographic projector flickered to life, and High Counselor Varkus appeared in cold blue light. Tall, thin, blue-skinned, and always looking like emotion was an inconvenience. His voice sounded like a machine pretending to be polite. Admiral Thorne, he said, the war is over. The threat is gone. But we have realized that humanity presents a new problem. No one moved. Varkus continued. You are too violent. Too ambitious. Your species adapts too quickly. Your population expands too fast. You are unstable. You are a threat to the balance of this galaxy. Thorne narrowed his eyes. What are you saying, Varkus? The counselor didn't blink. We are saying your services are no longer required. All human ships will power down immediately and prepare for Federation boarding. Your colonies will be dismantled. Your people will be relocated to a single controlled system under our protection. Protection. That was the word tyrants always used. The bridge went silent. Then Thorne asked the only question that mattered. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us? Varkus tilted his head slightly. You should be grateful we are allowing you to survive. And before anyone could respond, they opened fire. Not lasers. Ion pulses. They knew exactly where to hit. The retribution shook violently as blue-white energy slammed into our hull. The lights died. Alarms screamed. Red emergency lights flooded the bridge like blood. Status! Thorne barked. Engines dead, sir. Shields down to 10%. Main weapons offline. The comms officer turned, panic in his voice. Sir, they've infected our systems. The repair nanites they gave us last month, they were carrying sabotage code. They've shut us down from the inside. That was the moment it became clear. This wasn't fear. This was preparation. They had planned this for months. While we fought their war, they were building our prison. Across the sector, human colony ships were seized. Fuel depots confiscated. Food supplies cut off. Communications silenced. They took everything in a single move. Surgical. They thought if they stripped away our technology, we would crawl back to Earth and disappear quietly. Varkas appeared one last time on the dark screen. Do not be sad, Admiral. History will remember humanity kindly. As useful soldiers. The screen went black. Silence. Around me, the crew stood frozen. Angry. Humiliated. We were drifting in dead space while Federation ships pulled away, already celebrating their victory. They thought it was over. Everyone looked at Admiral Thorne. He said nothing. He walked slowly to the back of the bridge, opened a small metal locker, and pulled out something ancient. A cigar. Real tobacco. From Earth. He lit it carefully while alarms screamed around us. Smoke curled into the red light. Then he turned around. They think we have nothing, he said quietly. No one spoke. They think because they took our plasma cores, our shields, our pretty little alien toys, we are beaten. He looked at every person on that bridge. There was no fear in his eyes. Only fire. The Federation forgot one thing about humans. He took a slow drag. We didn't start with plasma. His voice dropped lower. We started with rocks and sticks. Something changed in that room. People stood straighter. Breathing slowed. Because we all understood what he meant. Technology didn't make us dangerous. Hunger did. This did. Survival did. And when someone takes everything from a human, we do not surrender. We rebuild. Then we take theirs. Thorne turned to Chief Engineer Sarah, who still had grease on her hands and murder in her eyes. Can we access emergency manual overrides? The old mechanical systems? She blinked once, then smiled. Yes, sir. They disabled the digital systems, but they never touched the hydraulic controls. They probably don't even know they exist. Good. Thorne smiled. It was not a comforting smile. It was the kind of smile people wear right before history gets expensive. Open shortwave communication. Sir? The old frequencies. 20th century radio bands. Analog. Sarah's grin widened. The aliens won't even be listening there. Exactly. He stepped back toward the stars. Call every surviving human ship. Every mining station. Every transport barge. Every mechanic with a wrench and a grudge. I finally found my voice. And what do we tell them, sir? Thorne stared at the glowing cities of the Federation in the distance. His answer became legend. Tell them the plan has changed. He took one last drag from the cigar. They took our future. He crushed the cigar into the metal floor. So now, we're going to take their everything. He looked back at us. Every ship. Every mine. Every credit. Every throne. We're not going home. The pause. We're going shopping. The Federation made one fatal mistake. They believed that because humans were low-tech, we were helpless. They looked at our ships and saw scrap metal. Noise. Primitive engines and ugly steel hulls. To them, we were outdated. But to a human engineer, scrap metal is just a weapon waiting to be assembled. For 3 days, the UEF retribution drifted through space like a corpse. To alien scanners, we were finished. Dead in the void. No power signatures, no movement, no threat. Federation patrol ships passed by without a second glance. Inside, we were very much alive. The glowing blue power systems they had gifted us were gone, sabotaged by their own nanites. We tore them out. We ran thick copper wires through the walls like veins. Old diesel generators roared in the lower decks, coughing smoke and shaking the hull. Ancient mechanical switches clicked instead of holograms glowing. The Federation had never imagined a warship powered by technology so old it looked like archaeology. That was their weakness. They only respected things they could understand. Chief Engineer Sarah stood in the engine room with grease across her face and a wrench in her hand like it was a holy artifact. "Shortwave radio is live," she said. "I've reached the Ironclad, the Vanguard, and Mining Colony 9. Admiral Thorne nodded. "Tell them to stay dark. No lights. No active scans. No digital transmissions." Sarah frowned. "What's the target?" Thorne stepped over to the star map and pointed at a glowing moon. "Zios." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. The Zul energy depot on the moon of Zios was where the Federation stored the fuel they had stolen from human fleets. It was one of the most heavily protected supply stations in the sector. A fortress of glass, steel, and artificial intelligence. I stared at the map. "Sir, Zios is protected by a Class 5 AI defense shield. We don't have access codes anymore." Thorne tapped the side of his head. "We don't need codes." He smirked. "We have a human virus no AI can calculate." That was the thing about alien intelligence. It was brilliant. It was also predictable. Their defenses were designed to stop hacking, energy weapons, and logical attacks. They prepared for enemies who played by rules. Humans did not. We didn't fly to Zios using engines. That would trigger sensors. Instead, we shut everything down. No engines. No shields. No active systems. We drifted. Using the gravity pull of a nearby gas giant, we let physics do the work. 50,000 tons of dead steel falling silently through the dark like a ghost. No heat. No signal. Just mass and momentum. As the moon came into view, I finally saw it. The depot. It was beautiful. A massive tower of glass and silver rising from the lunar surface, glowing with blue light. Millions of gallons of star fuel stored inside like liquid sunlight. Enough energy to power fleets. Enough to start wars. Enough to take back what was ours. On the bridge, nobody spoke. Thorne stood there with his hands behind his back like a man watching a sunrise. Then he said one word. "Now." We did not fire lasers. We fired harpoons. Massive steel launchers thundered from the Retribution's hull. Giant metal spikes with magnetic heads screamed through space and slammed into the depot. Clang, clang, clang. The entire structure shook. The Federation AI froze. Its defensive systems were built to stop plasma, missiles, cyber attacks. It had no idea what to do with a sharpened piece of metal attached to a cable. It was like asking a supercomputer to defend itself from a caveman with a spear. Perfect confusion. "Breach team, move." That was my cue. I led the first squad. We didn't wear sleek alien armor. We wore heavy lead-lined suits, thick and ugly and reliable. Real protection. Real weight. We hooked ourselves to the cables and launched. For one glorious second, we were pirates. Swinging across the void on steel lines toward the richest fuel depot in the galaxy. When we hit the glass walls, we didn't use plasma cutters. We used thermite. Simple chemistry. Old Earth fire. Bright white heat melted through indestructible alien shielding like butter under a blowtorch. Inside, chaos had already begun. Zul guards were floating in panic. Chief Engineer Sarah had done her part. She hadn't hacked the security systems. She had simply overloaded the local gravity stabilizers. The aliens, used to perfect controlled gravity, suddenly found themselves helpless, floating, spinning, crashing into walls like terrified fish in a bowl. But humans? We trained in 0G before breakfast. We were born for chaos. "Secure the tanks." I shouted. A Zul guard turned toward me with a glowing pulse rifle. I shot him first. Not with a plasma weapon. With a pistol. A real gun. Lead bullets. Old-fashioned thunder. The sound cracked through the station like a bomb. The Zul froze. They had never heard gunfire before. To them, it sounded like the sky itself had broken. That moment of hesitation was enough. My team moved fast. Smoke grenades, flashbangs, heavy boots. No elegance. No precision. Just violence with a purpose. Room by room, tank by tank, we took the depot. Then came the part that made it art. Admiral Thorne's orders had been clear. Don't just steal the fuel. Take everything. Storage wing secured, Sarah reported over comms. Detach it, Thorne answered. I blinked. Sir, the whole wing? His voice came back calm. Yes. If we're stealing, let's not be rude. Massive industrial thrusters were attached to the station's fuel storage section. Engineers cut support beams. Explosive bolts snapped. With a scream of tortured metal, the entire fuel wing separated from the depot. We had literally stolen half the building. The Retribution fired its ancient mechanical thrusters, coughing force into the vacuum, and slowly began towing the entire stolen structure away from the moon. By the time Federation warships arrived, we were already gone. Vanished into darkness. All they found was half a building, shattered glass, and one message painted across the remaining wall in giant white letters. Thanks for the gas. We'll be back for the tires. Back at our hidden rally point near the asteroid belt, the human fleet was waiting. Mining ships, transport barges, old war cruisers, everything that had survived betrayal. When they saw us towing an entire alien fuel depot behind the Retribution, the cheers over radio nearly broke every speaker. For the first time since the betrayal, people were laughing. Not because the war was over, because revenge had officially begun. We now had enough fuel to power every surviving human ship for a year. But more importantly, we had captured something even better. Repair droids. Thousands of them. Small alien maintenance robots designed to fix Federation systems. Tiny little mechanical traders. Admiral Thorne stood in the cargo bay, staring at them as they moved in neat little lines across the floor. He folded his arms. They thought they could lock us out of the galaxy. He looked at us. But humans are the best thieves in existence. He crouched down, picked up one of the droids, and held it in his hand. We are not going to fight their empire. His eyes were cold. We are going to dismantle it. He placed the droid back down. Bolt by bolt. The betrayal had wounded us. But it had also done something worse for them. It had awakened us. We were no longer soldiers. No longer allies. No longer guests asking politely for a seat at the table. We were the owners of the Great Reclamation. And Admiral Thorne had already chosen the next target. He looked up at the stars and smiled. Next stop, he said, the Zul Central Bank. After the fuel heist at Zios, the Galactic Federation was in chaos. They called us pirates. Savages. Primitive thieves crawling through the stars with stolen fuel and outdated weapons. High Counselor Varkas appeared on every major broadcast, promising swift justice and placing the largest bounty in galactic history on Admiral Marcus Thorne's head. But even then, they still didn't understand. They thought we were desperate. We were organized. They thought we were surviving. We were investing. Because fuel was never the real prize. Fuel just buys you time. What we needed next was power. Not military power. Economic power. And for that, there was only one target. Ethelgard. The jewel of the galaxy. A planet-sized city built entirely around wealth. Every digital credit, every physical Luminina crystal, every trade agreement, military contract, and ownership deed across all 5 Federation races passed through the great archives of Ethelgard. It wasn't just a bank. It was the heart of civilization. Admiral Thorne stood before the commanders of the human fleet inside the war room of the Retribution, the stolen fuel depot glowing behind him like a trophy. If we steal the crystals, one commander said, we can buy weapons from the Outer Rim black markets. Thorne nodded. True. Then he pointed at the glowing image of the Central Archive. But if we steal the data? He let the silence sit. We own their history. That was the difference between thieves and conquerors. A thief steals money. A conqueror steals ownership. The Federation security around Ethelgard was legendary. Orbital scanners could detect a single heartbeat from space. Logic gate firewalls could stop any AI-driven hack before it even began. Every known infiltration method had been accounted for. So we used something unknown. A comet. Not a stealth ship. Not a cloaked cruiser. A frozen rock. We found a massive ice comet already drifting toward Ethelgard's star system. Natural debris. Harmless. Invisible to suspicion. We hollowed out the center. Inside, we packed 50 of our best infiltrators. No electronics. No active heat signatures. No powered armor. No AI. Just humans sitting in freezing darkness with old-school oxygen tanks and enough weapons to start a small religion. I led the team. For 12 hours we sat in silence as the comet passed through orbital defenses. Federation scanners looked at it. Labeled it natural debris. Ignored it. That was the beauty of arrogance. It blinds better than any smoke grenade. When the comet entered the upper atmosphere of Ethelgard, we broke open the shell. Chunks of ice shattered around us like falling stars. Then we jumped. No engines. No pods. Wingsuits. Simple fabric and physics. We looked like giant birds dropping from the heavens. No radar. No thermal signature. Just gravity and intent. The city stretched below us like a living machine, towers of gold and silver, rivers of moving traffic, glowing highways suspended in the sky. At the center stood the Great Bank. Beautiful, arrogant, expensive. We landed on the roof at midnight. No alarms. No explosions. Just silence. Sarah's voice came through the wired headset. Thermal charges ready. No radio signals. No traceable transmissions. Old wires. Old tricks. The roof didn't explode. It melted. A clean hole opened beneath us, and one by one, we dropped into the vault chamber. I still remember the first sight. Rows and rows of glowing blue luminina crystals stretched farther than I could see. Trillions in wealth. Enough to buy planets. Enough to buy wars. Half my team stared like children seeing treasure for the first time. But that wasn't why we were there. Load the crystals, I ordered. Then I ran for the central core. The real target. The Federation's economic memory. You couldn't hack a Zul core with a human laptop. Their systems were too advanced, too alien, too arrogant. So we didn't hack it. I pulled a magnetic pulse induction coil from my pack and locked it into place. Sarah's voice whispered in my ear. Mirror program ready. We weren't downloading the data. We were copying its physical magnetic state. A complete imprint. Like pressing the galaxy's financial soul into wet cement. A perfect clone of every record. Every debt. Every secret. Every lie. That was the moment we truly became dangerous. Not because we were stealing money. Because we were stealing truth. Then the alarm screamed. Zul guards stormed into the chamber, four-armed giants carrying glowing stun staffs and enough arrogance to fill a moon. Their leader stepped forward. Human scum. Classic villain energy. Drop the crystals and die. I looked at him. And pressed the button on my belt. We're not here for the crystals, buddy. At first, nothing happened. Then the entire vault floor shook. Outside, deep beneath the city, human mining crews were already at work. For 2 days, disguised as maintenance workers, they had dug tunnels beneath the bank using industrial lasers and old earth drilling equipment. And now, attached to the foundations of the vault itself, industrial mining magnets. Massive ones. Designed to move asteroids. Rumble. The floor cracked. The guards stumbled. Another violent shake. Then 10 entire floors of the central vault tore free and dropped straight down into the darkness. The Zul screamed. Crystals shattered. Metal bent. Security systems lost their minds. We fell with the vault. Except we were ready. Magnetic boots locked us to the floor while the guards tumbled helplessly around us like furniture in a collapsing elevator. Into the sewer tunnels. Darkness swallowed us. Our night vision goggles turned chaos into clarity. The Zul guards relied on bright sensors, perfect lighting, visual enhancements. We relied on being mean in the dark. Silenced pistols. Quick work. By the time Federation security reached the surface, we were already gone. The entire vault floor had been loaded onto an abandoned underground maglev train, An ancient transport system the Zul had forgotten existed. Old infrastructure. Always useful. We disappeared beneath their own city carrying 10 floors of their wealth like thieves in a bedtime story. But the best part came the next morning. Because we didn't send a threat. We sent paperwork. Every screen in the Federation lit up with a galaxy-wide legal broadcast. Admiral Thorne appeared, calm as ever, sitting in a leather chair with a glass of wine in one hand and a stack of digital deeds in the other. No armor. No shouting. Just confidence. Attention, citizens of the Federation. He took a sip. According to your own laws, Section 4, Article 9, the owner of the original physical deed retains legal ownership of all registered assets. He smiled. And well, he held up the papers. I am currently holding the deeds to your 3 largest mining planets, 2 solar collectors, and High Counselor Varkus's private summer villa. Somewhere across the galaxy, I imagine Varkus choking. Thorne continued. Technically, that means all of you are currently trespassing on human property. Another sip. You have 24 hours to begin paying rent. He leaned forward slightly. Acceptable forms of payment include military technology, warships, and public apologies written in complete sentences. Then the smile. If payment is not received, we begin evictions. The screen went black. Across the galaxy, silence. Then panic. The Federation had spent centuries building an empire based on rules, contracts, and ownership. And now humans had used those same rules to become the landlords of civilization. They betrayed us to protect their power. Now they were learning the most terrifying truth in the universe. Never let humans read the fine print. The Federation did not accept the new reality immediately. At first, they mocked it. High Counselor Varkus stood before the assembled fleets and broadcast across the entire galaxy, his voice sharp with contempt. The humans are nothing more than opportunists with stolen equipment and temporary luck, he declared. We do not negotiate with thieves. The Zul admirals laughed. The Krill generals dismissed it. The Zyos bankers called it a legal joke. But beneath the arrogance, something had already shifted. Because in war, losing ships is painful. Losing fuel is dangerous. Losing money is crippling. But losing control of communication? That is where empires start to rot. And we had already taken that. We didn't just steal systems. We hijacked perception. We had inserted ourselves between every message, every order, every alliance in the Federation. So while they believed they were still in control, they were already reacting to our version of reality. Varkus ordered the Zul dreadnought fleet to strike back at a supposed human stronghold in the Orion Drift. What he didn't know was that the coordinates had been quietly altered by us. When the Zul fleet arrived, there was nothing there. Just empty space. Meanwhile, another message, seemingly from the Krill Empire, was intercepted and slightly rewritten before delivery. It told the Krill that the Zul had already attacked their supply lines. And just like that, old allies turned their weapons toward each other. Confusion spread faster than fire. Reports contradicted reports. Orders were reversed mid-execution. Entire fleets paused in space, unsure whether they were following commands or traps. And in the middle of it all, we stayed invisible. Admiral Thorne watched the chaos unfold from the bridge of the Retribution, now docked inside an asteroid field disguised as debris. Silence is a weapon, he said quietly. Around him, officers monitored the breakdown of Federation coordination. They can't trust their own communications anymore, Sarah replied. Thorne nodded. And when why? Oh, you can't trust communication? He tapped the glass of the viewport. You stopped trusting each other. That was the real collapse. Not explosions. Not invasions. Suspicion. While the Federation tore itself apart trying to identify real threats from fake ones, we moved to the next layer of control. Identity. Every system in the Federation, ships, banks, weapon platforms, cities, was tied to a centralized identity verification network maintained by High Council Authority keys. Keys that Varkus believed were unbreakable. He was wrong. We didn't crack them. We stole them. Not digitally. Physically. During the chaos of the Ethelgard aftermath, our maintenance teams had already infiltrated sync stations disguised as cleaning crews, repair technicians, and logistics staff. We didn't break locks. We replaced personnel. By the time the Federation realized what had happened, their own systems were already running on human-controlled access nodes. Marcus attempted to access his personal command terminal. A simple message appeared on the screen. Access denied. He tried again. Identity not recognized. Another line appeared beneath it. This terminal is now under the administration of the Human Reclamation Authority. Then a small addition. Password hint. We are sorry humans 123. That was the moment something broke in him. Not anger. Not rage. Something worse. Helplessness. Because for the first time, he wasn't being outgunned. He was being outperformed inside his own system. Meanwhile, Admiral Thorne escalated the pressure. Not with war declarations. With administration. Every captured system was reorganized. Every seized ship was re-registered. Every stolen asset was reclassified as recovered property under Emergency Stabilization Protocol. And then came the broadcast. Thorne appeared across every channel in the Federation, standing in what used to be their central command hall. Behind him were rows of captured dreadnoughts, now repainted, human insignia replacing alien emblems. He looked directly into the camera. "Marcus," he said calmly, "you said we would be paid in fire." He gestured behind him. "Your fleet has excellent firepower. We've accepted it as payment." The pause. Non-refundable. The bridge crews of every Federation ship watching that broadcast went silent, because they recognized their own ships behind him, their own technology, their own power, now under someone else's command. Thorne continued. "You've lost your fuel supply chain. You've lost your central bank. You've lost your primary fleet." He leaned slightly forward. "And now you've lost your confidence." A faint smile. "We are not done yet." He clicked a control. A map appeared. Planet Series 2. Federation Food Production Hub. "The next system on our list," he said, "is your food infrastructure." That was when the Federation finally understood. This was not a raid. Not rebellion. Not survival. It was systematic dismantling. One layer at a time. Marcus convened an emergency council on Primus. The leaders of the Zul, Krill, and Zyos stood together for the first time in centuries, not as rivals, but as frightened allies. "The humans are destabilizing the entire network," one of them said. "They cannot be allowed to control food systems," another insisted. But panic had already replaced authority, because they were no longer discussing strategy. They were reacting. And in warfare, the side that reacts loses. On a quiet transport channel, Sarah monitored Federation logistics. "They're concentrating everything at Series 2, she said. "Food synthesizers, distribution hubs, nutrient reserves." Thorne nodded. "That's where they think they're safe." He stood up. "Then that's where we remind them they're not." Outside the viewport, stolen dreadnoughts shifted formation. Not like invaders. Like an organized fleet. A fleet that had learned how to use someone else's empire better than its owners. Thorne looked at the stars. "They betrayed us thinking we were dependent on them." He exhaled slowly. "We're going to show them what dependency actually looks like." And for the first time since the betrayal, the Federation realized something terrifying. The humans weren't escalating. They were just getting started. After Ethelgard and the collapse of their communication control, the Federation thought they could still hold one thing together. Because no empire survives without it. On Planet Series 2, the Federation's largest agricultural synthesis network stretched across entire continents. Towering bioreactors converted raw energy into perfect, sterile food, nutrient blocks, synthetic meat, engineered fruit. It was clean, controlled, predictable, and completely dependent on precision systems that assumed nothing ever went wrong. High Counselor Marcus stood in the command chamber above the planet's surface. "This is where they stop," he said firmly. "They can steal ships. They can steal money. But they cannot steal sustenance. Without Series 2, they starve." The other leaders nodded. For the first time in days, They felt something close to confidence. Because food was physical. You couldn't hack it easily. You couldn't just take it. Or so they believed. But we weren't interested in attacking Ceres, too, like an army. We were interested in infecting it like nature. Admiral Thorne studied the planet from orbit. No dreadnoughts, he said. No one questioned him anymore. We had learned that direct force was the most expensive way to win. Instead, we used what the Federation never respected. During the Void Eater War, humanity had deployed hundreds of waste transport barges. Ugly, forgotten ships designed to carry garbage away from battle zones. The Federation never bothered to inspect them. They saw no value in waste. So we filled them with something else. Earth biology. Soil. Insects. Seeds. Launch the ecopods, Thorne ordered. We didn't fire weapons. We opened cargo bays. And released Earth onto their perfect world. The first pods entered atmosphere silently. No explosions. No alarms. Just descent. At first, the Federation sensors flagged them as harmless organic debris. A minor anomaly. Not worth attention. That was their second mistake. Because Earth doesn't behave politely in sterile systems. Within hours, the first wave of locusts hatched. Millions of them. Then kudzu vines spread like wildfire across nutrient fields. Fast-growing, unstoppable, adapting faster than any synthetic control system could react. Inside the command center, alarms finally began screaming. Biocontamination detected. System clogging in Sector 14. Cooling vents blocked. Unknown organic growth accelerating. Marcus slammed his fist on the console. Deploy sterilization protocols. But it was already too late. The machines were never designed for chaos. They were built for perfection. And perfection cannot handle life. On the surface, I led a small infiltration team disguised in Federation repair gear. We didn't fire weapons at first. We just walked through gates. Because panic had already done most of the work for us. A disguised broadcast went out across the planet. Sarah's voice, calm and synthetic. Attention Ceres, 2 facility personnel. Biohazard detected. Evacuate immediately. Cleaning drones are en route. The message was flawless. It sounded official. It sounded safe. So they left. Entire production teams abandoned stations. Security units pulled back. Nobody questioned it. Because fear always trusts authority faster than logic. And when the facilities were empty, we entered. Not as invaders. As maintenance staff. White suits. Clean tools. Quiet footsteps. Inside the central synthesis hub, I stood beneath towers of processed food reserves stretching higher than buildings. Enough food to feed trillions. Look at this, Sarah said over comms. They built heaven and locked the recipe behind encryption. I stepped forward. We don't need the recipe. We needed control. And control doesn't always mean destruction. Sometimes it means rewriting purpose. We accessed the central synthesis core. Not through hacking. Through access assumption. We physically inserted our own interface module into the system. A simple human-built override device. Old logic. Simple inputs. No elegance. Just authority. And then we changed one line. Every food output algorithm across Series 2. One modification. One constraint. From that moment forward, everything produced would taste like Earth's most infamous flavor profile. Marmite. Ghost pepper. Salt. Bitterness. In edible form. Not poisonous. Just unbearable. Perfectly safe. Perfectly inedible for them. The system accepted the update. Because it didn't recognize sabotage that didn't break rules. Then the Federation returned. Too late. The evacuation orders were reversed. Emergency crews rushed back in. They restarted the synthesizers. And watched in confusion as the first food batch came out. A perfectly shaped nutrient block. Standard. And wrong. One bite. That was all it took. The Zul technician collapsed coughing. What is this? Another spat out synthetic fruit, shaking violently. It burns. Marcus arrived on the surface hours later. He tasted it himself. Just once. His face twisted. And then he understood. Not poisoned. Not destroyed. Humiliated. A planet that fed trillions had been turned into a kitchen they couldn't eat from. That's when Admiral Thorne appeared on every screen again. Seated. Eating an earth-grown apple. Alive. "Hey Varkas," he said casually, "we heard your new menu isn't going over well." He took a bite. "Don't worry. We kept the sweet setting for ourselves." Varkas stared at the screen. "You can't sustain war without food," Thorne continued. "And you can't sustain soldiers who refuse to eat." The pause. Then the final pressure. "If you want your taste buds back, send us the navigation codes to the Great Nebula." Another bite. "Or adapt." The broadcast ended. And for the first time in Federation history, their greatest strength had been turned into a joke they couldn't fix. Across the galaxy, panic turned into hunger. Armies could not march. Fleets could not stay supplied. Morale collapsed not because of death, but because of discomfort, because nothing breaks an empire faster than making its soldiers refuse dinner. And while the Federation struggled with something as simple as food, Admiral Thorne was already looking at the next system. Not war. Not ships. Not money. Something far more fragile. Communication itself. The Federation tried to recover control through what they had always trusted most. Communication. If ships, money, and food could be taken, then at least messages would hold the Empire together. High Counselor Varkas ordered the activation of the Central Subspace Array. "Re-establish contact with all factions," he commanded. "The Krill, the Zul, the Zyos. We need a unified response." The galaxy's communication system was their masterpiece. Light-speed signal pulses transmitted through artificial wormholes. Instantaneous. Perfectly synchronized. It was the nervous system of the entire Federation. If it failed, everything else would collapse into silence. Admiral Sarah studied the system from a stolen terminal. "It's beautiful," she admitted. "And fragile." Thorne leaned over the holographic map. "Where's the weak point?" She highlighted 3 massive orbital structures. Sync stations. They stabilize timing for every signal across the network. Without them, messages desynchronize and collapse into noise. Thorne nodded. "So if we take them out?" She finished the sentence. "The entire Federation goes dark." Varkas believed the system was untouchable. Because it wasn't a weapon. It was infrastructure. And empires always underestimate infrastructure warfare. We didn't prepare battleships. We prepared interference. Small tug engines. Bullholes. No signatures. No glory. Just function. Operation Echo began without announcement. I led the strike team toward Sync Station Alpha. A massive golden ring. Suspended in orbit, glowing softly like a halo around the planet. No guards patrolled it. Only automated turrets. Because the Federation assumed nobody attacks communication systems. They assumed wrong. "Approaching range," my pilot whispered. "Don't engage directly," I said. "We're not here to fight. We're here to blind." We deployed chaff. Millions of tiny aluminum fragments scattered into space like glitter in a storm. The station's targeting systems locked on immediately. Lasers fired. And immediately failed. Because they hit reflections. Not targets. The entire defense grid began firing at its own illusions. A trillion-credit system defeated by cheap metal and physics. Inside the station, Sarah's team inserted the human filter. We didn't shut down communication. We rewired it. Every outgoing message now passed through human control nodes. And then we let them speak. But not as themselves. Varkas sent a command to the Krill Empire. "Prepare unified strike against humans." But by the time it reached its destination, it had been subtly altered. The Krill received. "The Zul have already declared war on you. Respond immediately." At the same time, a second message arrived from Krill Command. "The Federation is collapsing. Align with humans for survival." Neither was true. Both were engineered. And both were believed. Within hours, the galaxy stopped communicating. Not because systems were destroyed, But because no one trusted anything they received, every message became suspect. Every command became a potential trap. Fleets halted mid-flight. Alliances fractured instantly. Old enemies pointed guns at each other while asking for clarification that never came. Marcus tried to restore order through official channels. But every channel he used had already been touched, edited, redirected, rewritten. He watched reports flood in. Krill fleet defecting. Zul accusing Zyos of sabotage. Zyos declaring emergency independence. And none of it made sense. Because it wasn't meant to. It was meant to overwhelm logic itself. On the Retribution, I watched it unfold. They're arguing over fake orders, I said. Sarah smiled faintly. They're fighting ghosts. Thorne nodded slowly. Good. He tapped the screen. When people can't trust information, they start trusting fear instead. The pause. And fear is easier to control than truth. But communication disruption was only phase 1. Phase 2 was worse. Identity. Every system in the Federation relied on digital authority keys issued by the High Council. Ship access. Bank systems. Defense grids. Even civilian infrastructure. Everything was authenticated. Everything depended on Marcus's central signature. And we now had it. Not stolen in a single hack, but quietly absorbed through sync station control. Layer by layer. Until the system stopped asking who we were. And started believing we were them. Marcus attempted to log into his command terminal. A red warning appeared. Identity mismatch detected. He tried again. Access denied. Then the final message appeared. This identity is no longer recognized as valid authority. Below it, administrative control transferred. He froze. Then another line appeared. New system owner, Human Reclamation Authority. And finally, suggested password, we are sorry humans 123. Marcus stepped back from the terminal like it had insulted him personally. For the first time, he was not just losing control. He was being replaced inside his own authority system. Not defeated, overwritten. And while he stood in silence, staring at his erased identity, Admiral Thorne activated the next broadcast. Every screen in the Federation lit up. He appeared seated in the captured flagship bridge, surrounded by their own dreadnought fleet now painted in human markings. Marcus, he said calmly, you are no longer receiving messages from your empire. A slight pause. You are receiving them from us. He gestured behind him. Your fleet has been reassigned. Your communication network has been repurposed. Your command authority has been restructured. He leaned forward slightly. And since you can't coordinate, you can't resist. The screen cut to visuals of Federation fleets drifting, confused, misinformed, and fractured across the galaxy. Then Thorne delivered the final line. We didn't destroy your voice. We taught it to speak our language. And in that moment, the Federation realized something terrifying. They were no longer being invaded. They were being edited. And whoever controls the story of a galaxy, controls the galaxy itself. With the Federation's communication network collapsed into paranoia, the galaxy entered a new kind of war. No fleets moved with certainty anymore. Every order was questioned. Every alliance was temporary. Even the strongest empires, the Zul, the Krill, the Zyos, began to fracture internally. But High Counselor Marcus refused to accept it. He gathered what remained of the High Council inside the Vault Citadel on Primus, a heavily shielded fortress built to survive planetary extinction events. This ends now, he said coldly. We stop reacting. We restore authority. We eliminate human interference completely. A Zul general stepped forward. Our systems are compromised. Our fleets don't trust commands anymore. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. Then we remove the humans from the equation entirely. That was the final shift. From defense to desperation. Because when empires stop trying to win carefully, they start trying to win violently. And violence was something the Federation still believed it understood better than us. They declared total mobilization. Every remaining dreadnought. Every reserve fleet. every orbital weapon platform. All pointed toward one objective. They believed that if they cut off the head, the body would collapse. But they still didn't understand something fundamental. Humans don't have a single head. We have millions. On a quiet asteroid field far from Federation surveillance, Admiral Thorne stood before the assembled human command network. Not a central army. Not a unified empire. A scattered collection of miners, engineers, ex-soldiers, smugglers, and survivors. People the Federation had once dismissed as irrelevant. Now they were the core of everything. "We are not going to meet them in open war," Thorne said. A commander frowned. "They're coming with everything they have." Thorne nodded. "Good." He turned toward the star map. "Let them bring everything." Sarah stepped forward, pointing at multiple regions of the galaxy. "Their fleets are converging on Earth. But they're overextended. Supply chains are fractured. Communication is unreliable. Their coordination is collapsing every hour." Thorne finished her thought. "They're angry." The pause. "And angry armies make predictable mistakes." He zoomed the map out. "While they chase Earth." He tapped multiple points across the galaxy. "We take everything else." This wasn't defense. It wasn't even counterattack. It was disappearance warfare. While the Federation assembled its final strike force, human teams were already moving through captured infrastructure. Shipyards, fuel depots, repair stations, bank nodes, food synthesis control centers. Not destroying, reassigning. Every system the Federation depended on was quietly rekeyed, rerouted, or re-registered under Human Reclamation Authority protocols. And the Federation didn't even notice in time. Because they were focused on Earth. Marcus believed he was preparing the final solution. He stood aboard the flagship Judicator, surrounded by the largest remaining fleet in known space. "This is not a negotiation," he declared to the assembled captains. "This is extinction prevention." Behind him, holographic images of Earth flickered. Blue. "Insignificant. Once we eliminate the human leadership," he continued, "the galaxy will return to order." But even as he spoke, something was already wrong. Fleet captains began receiving conflicting navigation updates. Fuel reserves reported as missing. Entire squadrons failed to respond. "Check the command network," one officer shouted. "We're losing sync again." Marcus turned sharply. "That's impossible. We isolated human access points." A technician hesitated. "Sir, we didn't lose access." He swallowed. "We lost ownership." Silence. Then alarms erupted across the bridge, across the fleet, across the entire armada. Systems that had always obeyed Federation authority simply stopped recognizing it. One dreadnought's engines powered down mid-flight. Another redirected course without command. A third broadcast a short message across internal channels. New operational directive received. Priority, Human Reclamation Authority. Marcus froze. "This is interference," he said slowly. "No," Sarah's voice replied over an open channel. Close. "Interference is when you interrupt a system." The pause. "We replaced yours." Across the fleet, human-controlled maintenance drones, once dismissed as repair units, began activating inside engine cores, weapon systems, and navigation arrays. Not attacking. Redirecting. Rewriting control logic at the hardware level. Ships didn't explode. They turned. Slowly. One by one. Pointing away from Earth. Pointing away from Federation command. Pointing toward new coordinates. Human coordinates. Thorne's voice came through the fleet-wide channel. "You built your empire on centralized control." The pause. "We built ours inside your infrastructure." Marcus shouted, "Shut it down." But his own command codes failed. Denied. Invalid. Reassigned. Every attempt to regain control returned the same message. Insufficient authority. Then Thorne appeared on every screen in the fleet. Not on a captured bridge this time. Not in a stolen system. But broadcast through their own high-security military channel. He looked directly at Marcus. "You wanted to cut off the head," Thorne said. He gestured behind him. Thomas, we never had one. Behind him, images flashed of human engineers inside Federation shipyards, scientists inside alien labs, pilots inside captured dreadnoughts, lawyers inside council systems, maintenance crews inside AI cores. Everywhere. Every layer. Every system. We didn't fight your empire, Thorne continued. We became its maintenance team. A faint smile. And you gave us access to everything. Marcus finally understood. This was never a war, he whispered. Thorne nodded slightly. It was an audit. Across the fleet, engines shifted again. Weapons powered down. Shields disengaged. Navigation locked. Not destroyed. Reassigned. The entire Federation's strike force slowly rotated in space, away from Earth, and began moving under new command vectors. Marcus watched helplessly as his flagship responded to instructions he did not issue. Where are they going? He asked. Sarah answered softly. Home. The pause. Under new management. And in the silence that followed, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy stopped being an army and became property.